question is a word problem related to lines, slopes of lines. It says, in Washington County, the fine for speeding is $55 plus $15 for every mile per hour of the speed limit. On a certain stretch of road, the speed limit is 65 miles per hour. So part one, kind of label this 1, 2, and 3. Part one says, determine the function f of s that gives the fine if a person is driving s miles per hour. Make sure to use function notation. Okay. All right, so what we've got to do here is really figure out our slope and our intercept. If we want to answer number one, it's like y equals mx plus b, except we have f of s equals ms plus b. So it's pretty much the same thing. We just have the letters they're telling us. Instead of y, we're using f of s. And instead of x, we're using x. Sorry, instead of x, we're using s. All right, so we need to figure out the slope. What is m and what is b? Well, that's actually right in the problem. B is the initial amount, and it's telling you it's $55. Right, so if they're actually speeding 0, the logic would be that they wouldn't get a fine, but this would be $55. But we only write 55. And then, as we talked about before, the slope is what's changing. And here it's what's changing every mile per hour is 15. So m is 15. And that makes your equation f of s equals 15 times s, well, plus 55. Let me rewrite the s to make it look more like an s. But there is one exception, right? If we were going 65 miles an hour, if you can imagine plugging in 65 here, then 15 times 65 plus 55 is a pretty big number. You should not be fined that much because you are going the speed limit anyway. So what we have to do is fix this a little bit. Since s is the speed and the speed limit is 65, we replace with s minus 65. So our answer is 15 times s minus 65 plus 55. Now, what I would do, since we're going to work with it in parts 2 and 3, is just distribute this 15 through and simplify. And what we got here, we got 15 times s minus, what is 65 times 15? Let's just do that in our calculator. Be careful. 975 minus 975 plus 55. And then we can combine the negative 975 plus 55 to be negative 920. Right, so our function, we want to make sure we're using function notation. Don't use s, x, and y on this. We have f of s equals 15s minus 920. All right, now with some of the other word problems, what you plug in here might just be it. So if there's not a starting point, like here our starting point is 65, so we have to adjust for it. If your starting point is 0 in a problem, then you want to do this correction. But once we have the equation, parts 2 and 3 are just telling us to do something with the equation. So part 2 says, if a person is driving 83 miles per hour, what is the fine? Well, it's telling us plug in S equals 83. Right, the speed is S, and it's telling us the person's going 83 miles per hour. And we want to plug that into our equation. We got 15 times 83 minus 920. Once again, we'll just do that in the calculator. 15 times 83 gives us 1,245 minus 920 is 325. Quite a hefty fine, but it's $325. And part 3 says if a fine comes to $145, how much or how fast was the person driving? Well, since it's telling us the fine, it's telling us to plug in f of s. F is for the fine, equals 145. So we gotta do that. I guess I'll rewrite it. And then we'll be able to solve for s. So we've got 145 for f of s equals 15 times s minus 920. Now solve for s. Right, we're trying to figure out the speed anyway, so that makes sense. We add 920 to each side. 145 plus 920 is 1,065. That equals 15s. And then to finish up, I'll just give myself some more room here. We would divide each side by 15 to get s by itself. And what is 1,065 divided by 15? It is 71. So this person is going 71 miles per hour. And that's kind of a lot. You find $145 for going 6 miles an hour with the speed limit, but this probably isn't that accurate anyway. But that's the idea. With a lot of these word problems, you might be given the slope and the intercept at the beginning. And what you want to do is go ahead and plug them in to your equation. You might have to adjust like we did here. You won't always have to adjust. And then after you get the equation, word problems are really just plug in something, solve for something else.